Hello and welcome to the Amber Stitt Show. I am your host, Amber Stitt, and today we welcome back my colleague Bryan from Echelon Technologies to share a little bit more about some tips for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And so welcome back, Bryan. I appreciate you making the time to be with us again today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Yeah. For the audience that hasn't listened to our first episode together, I'm going to let you say a little bit about what you do over at Echelon, and then we're going to dive into some juicy, spooky statistics and stories just to kind of finish up the month of Halloween 2022, or the month of the month of October being Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but that month also being the holiday of Halloween. We'll share some scary stats and really dive into what's trending, what you see in your world. So I'll pass the mic and let you talk a little bit about what you do and what your day-to-day is like, and we'll dive into some really interesting stories, unfortunate stories, but interesting ones.
It is a scary month, and we've definitely got the scary stories to go with it.
Yeah.
So, hey everyone, again, thanks for having me, Amber. I'm Bryan. I'm with Echelon Technologies. We're a managed IT service provider with a heavy focus on cybersecurity. That's really first and foremost for us. We've been around quite a while, since about 2002, and over the time, we've certainly enjoyed the growth of significant growth of our client base, and we service all throughout the valley and also nationwide. So, but IT and cybersecurity, that's the name of the game. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah. So I think stories can hit home, make it real for us. Maybe let's start with I'll let you take it from here. I know that you do a lot of presenting out there. That's part of your thing as far as with education for different companies. So that's how we met. So I don't know if you want to talk to people, the audience, more on an individual basis, and we could dive into some business. I know that you have a lot of stories. We'll get to a couple today. So I'm going to let you take the lead here and just, I want to get the audience as many facts, interesting facts. I want them to take action today. I always talk about that with my framework of pathways of peak performance. Really take some action, implement some new strategies. I think your stories and statistics are really going to help everybody. So what do you think we should know to really kick this off?
All right. Let's see here. I think I'm going to start kind of with some light stories, like touching on a couple of big stories that we've heard about, and then we'll bore you with a few stats, because stats do get kind of boring after a while. But then I'll hit you with a few personal stories that we've dealt with, either me or my colleagues have dealt with in my time being here at Echelon. And there's some doozies in there.
Yeah.
So if we're ready to get started, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So last time we talked, I touched briefly on the fact that when you hear about major ransomware attacks or cyber attacks in the news, undoubtedly there's at least 100 or more that have happened behind the scenes to small to medium businesses. And with the pandemic, we really saw a major uptick in cyber attacks. And there's something that's very interesting stat, if you will. I don't have numbers, but a trend rather that we saw is extremely scary. Again, for the first time, we saw small to medium business become the number one target, not enterprise anymore. They can still get money after enterprise if they do, but they go after us as individuals. We're the weak links. We're the ones that click on the links and open the attachments at will. They hit us from all different angles. We heard about Colonial Pipeline. We heard about JBS Foods. We heard about Target. Now, with Target is one I want to talk about because that involves a small to medium business. That was actually their HVAC vendor is how that happened.
Okay.
So the HVAC vendor.
Not to interrupt you, Bryan, but you're talking about Target. Target, we're talking the red Target. We all shop at Target, maybe Amazon. Okay, that's correct. Yes?
Yep.
And then you're talking about the HVAC, whoever they hired within one of the stores?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So is HVAC vendor, right. So he sent an email to someone that worked at Target. I'm not sure if they were actually in corporate. I should probably know that. I don't know if it was a
That's okay.
specific store, but they had a Target, email
Yeah.
address. So the HVAC vendor got spoofed. Now, what does spoofed mean?
Mm.
Spoofed means impersonated, right? So someone, the bad guys got into behind the scenes, behind the safeguards of that HVAC vendor. Probably wasn't very well guarded, right?
Small
Security.
business, maybe.
So they got in through there. They impersonated that vendor, sent an email to the Target representative, who then opened it up and let the bad guys in the back door. And that's
Okay.
how Target got breached.
Okay.
And hundreds of thousands of records got exposed or whatever.
Okay.
So
You talked about COVID, though. Is this, I mean, some of these stories happened with, you're talking about the bigger enterprise stories, but what did you see trending though around the time of a 2-year window, essentially? You mentioned that earlier. What was that about?
this is what's scary. So no longer do you have to be super technical to be a hacker. So now there's ransomware as a service kits. There's phishing tools. I mean, you can go on the dark web and get whatever you want. So with the pandemic, with a ton of people being out of work, people got desperate. So they made the leap, went down to the dark web, rolled the dice, went down there, got those ransomware kits, teamed up with some hacker. It only takes a couple few people
Oh my
to
God.
bring a company down.
It's kind of like when you go network for the good. You go to a leadership conference, you shake hands with people. I meet you at a webinar. Okay, so you're saying people were looking for work, and so they're joining. They're literally going to the opposite spectrum and potentially
Going
looking
to
for
the dark side.
resources.
Is that scary?
Okay,
So
so yeah, I mean, we've talked about the dark web. I think everyone nods their head. It's like in financial world, we say, oh yeah, we know what an IRA is, but no one really knows individual retirement accounts are not with your employer. I think not everyone knows that fact. So we nod our head to dark web. Can you just give us a quick glimpse of what it really is?
So the dark web, when I describe the dark web, I use the iceberg illustration, right? So think about the iceberg. Up at the very top, you have that little top of the iceberg, and then down below it is the vast majority, right? So the top of that iceberg represents the surface web. And that's what we use all day, every day. That's your Google, your Yahoo, your anything that's publicly indexed that you can just type in a web address and go to that site. That's on the surface web. That's what we deal with all day, every day.
Okay.
Below that is what's called the deep web. That's the vast majority of the dark web, or of the World Wide Web.
Do you log into these websites that are, I mean, how do you, it sounds really silly, but how do you get there? I mean, what is the real, how is someone, I mean, I don't want to teach people how to do this, but I also want, that I am, as a parent, want parents to know how this is happening. So this is part of the reason why I want this to be more tangible. Like, I'm never going to go look for that, but how easy is this? I mean, how do people get into this?
Far too easy. So, and what I'm finding is, if you even Google, is the dark web dangerous, or what is Onion, the Onion Tor browser? So Onion, think about an onion. It's got layers, right? So the dark web, it's got layers. So with that, I'm surprised at how many, and we talked about earlier, or in the last episode, millennials and younger are fully aware of this and think
Okay.
that it is not something to be scared of, to be weary of. But Tor, Tor, I'll say it. You can Google it right now. That is a special type of browser that you have to download
Okay.
to get to the dark web. Once you do that, you're on the FBI watch list, guaranteed. They're looking for you.
So hey,
And yeah, they're keeping an eye on you because they want to see. 'Cause
right.
the dark web is all about anonymity. So let's continue on that path, right? So the deep web is the vast majority. That's government things, medical records, anything that has a layer of security that you have to type in some credentials to get to it. That's the deep web. Below that is the dark web. So within the military started the dark web way back in like 1996, and then they made it open source so anyone could mess with it in 2000, and that's when the bad guys got in there.
Interesting. Oh,
So for 20 years, they've been operating down there. Yeah.
Okay. So I know that you had shared a couple stories with me not too long ago. We talked about Target, some of the bigger ones. There was a story with one of your clients, I think.
A few of these, a few good ones. So a dental practice. The owner, he was a break fix client. He didn't want to pay for proactive flat rate, managed IT. He just
Break
wanted to
fix
call us.
is just, I got a problem, I'm going to call somebody. I'm not going to retain any other core elements of just like the team. It's just
Right.
that's what that means, right? Break fix person. Okay. I think a lot of
That's
the
right.
audience is probably one of those, right? We all kind of lump ourselves into that category for saving on expenses, but here's where it could be a problem. So go ahead. Thanks for letting me interrupt.
Sure. So he was a break fix client. He only called us when he needed, and everything else he did on his own. He had like a Netgear router or something like that, which is something that you might have in your house. It's definitely not suitable for business. And he got hit with ransomware. He got breached and he got hit with ransomware. They wanted, I forget what it was like 1 point some odd Bitcoins they wanted for
Oh
it,
my
which
goodness.
equated to yeah.
What if
So
you
they
don't have
want Bitcoin,
Bitcoin?
right? Oh, you can. Oh, they'll send you a link on how to go and convert cash to Bitcoin so you can pay them for
Okay.
sure.
So we need to
Oh yeah,
stop for a
they make it
second.
easy for you.
All right. So malware versus ransomware. I think in my head, I hear malware and I hear ransomware. I'm like, okay. But we're talking, there's a word included. It's ransom. So we're talking about, instead of kidnapping, it's a variation of that. So can we talk about malware versus ransomware and what that really means?
Sure. So malware is basically it's kind of a general term that's going to refer to anything, any kind of malicious software
Okay.
that can be embedded code, something that can cause harm, right? That can bring your systems down, that can pull data, right? Pull PII, that personal identifiable
Okay.
information that we talked about, pull financial data, things like that. Whereas a ransomware is the nastiest form of malware
Okay.
because not only is it pulling your data, but it's locking your files down. So when you go to log in, you get that skull and crossbones type of a graphic that they oftentimes throw out there and lets you know that you've been hacked and that they demand X amount of Bitcoin in order, or whatever form of payment. It's almost always Bitcoin in order to get your money or to get your data back.
Well, Bitcoin is because it's not regulated, so they can just. I'm guessing that's
Right.
why there's no paper trail.
Something, yeah, exactly. And as blockchain becomes more and more prominent, then that'll be more of a problem for those guys. But
Right.
they'll find other ways to demand their money. So,
All right. So literally,
ransomware locks you down.
you need to pay. Like, okay, so are there cases where people have actually paid and then they've gotten their records back?
Funny you should ask, Amber. I just pulled the
This
stat
is
on that
not.
this morning.
This was not a staged question. This is a real one.
No, I mean, okay, last year they spent like an average of 955,000 per attack for that was small to medium businesses. That's one stat.
So I'm
And where am I
paying $1
going
million
with that?
to get my stuff back.
That tells me that there's a lot of medium businesses in there that were probably hit for like 2 million, 3 million, things like that. And then you're balancing that out with the small guys that were probably hit for, 50K, 50 to 100K, something like
Okay.
that. So I wouldn't bank on small business being hit with $1 million. That rarely happens from what I've seen.
Okay.
But
But
what was the number?
we're talking about, we're not
72%.
even quantifying the time you're spending to be sure that you get things back and you're not working. You can't work because
Right.
you're shut down basically from your systems.
Your downtime, yeah, no one accounts for downtime. They just think about that ransomware. But I mean, a small business that's down for a week, can lose hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yeah.
just in that week of downtime.
Yep.
So,
Well, and then there's your reputation. If it gets known that you're getting breached, we know how that works in the world of media. We certainly wouldn't want to hire businesses that are under breach because we worry about our PII, right? The PII.
that's right. Very good. Very good. Yeah. In fact, another stat that I had was that 71% of clients polled said that they would leave a company that got breached.
Okay.
So think about that. Target might be able to handle
Right.
71% hit to their business, but can a SMB, a small business? No,
Okay.
no way.
And so when you think of it from the owner's perspective, obviously protecting your clients and your business, but how serious is your team going to take you if you're not protecting your house? So I think it's kind of a full circle. It's a very important thing for multiple reasons, but I think people would leave potentially different variations of what could happen. It's important to just have that trust out there for whether it's a client, employee, just anybody that you partner with.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So that's another thing that business owners have to heavily consider when looking at vendors is vetting those vendors. How secure are they? Enterprises like Target, sure, they might be able to handle a
Yeah.
71%, hit to their business, but the HVAC vendor for Target, no, absolutely not. Small business can't handle that.
Okay, so I know there's a number of stories, but we have limited time today. So, can you walk the audience through what you mentioned to me about a year ago about you're hanging out in your house, you got the kids in the house, they have some friends over, and just some simple mechanics of the guest Wi-Fi, having people log on to that. I mean, we just don't think that our kids are tapping into anything bad, and then sometimes they might go into the app store and buy something. Okay, but what if they're clicking on something or their friends are, and then your business could be breached, or even your PII, the personal information. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I'd like some of the audience to just go, all right, I'm going to do something new today. I'm going to go get my extra people on my team with the cybersecurity teams. At some point you will do that, right? But what can we do today just to protect our homes?
Sure. Okay. So great question, because as well, a lot of us are working from home, right? Or there's some kind of a hybrid. Some days of the week we're working from home. So now we are trying to couple our the bandwidth that we're using and that we're taxing our devices, our technology with, for work, as well as coupling that with all the Netflix streaming, the video games, and all that at home. So that in itself taxes your technology. So
Yeah.
number one thing you could do if you're noticing latency, if it's slow at home, upgrade your router, right?
Okay.
Get a more of a business grade router, because with that increase in performance, likely is going to come an increase in security as well,
Okay.
which is what you want. Not only that, but the ability to segment off guest Wi-Fi network versus your internal Wi-Fi network, or for that matter, your work versus your home,
Sure.
if you don't have a whole lot of guests over. But you nailed it. So when I talked earlier about the dark web and kids trying to, it's dangerous, more dangerous than ever, because young people aren't afraid of it and they're trying to go down there. So with that, if they're trying to go tap into the dark web on some device from your network,
Yeah.
then you're in trouble. Or they're bringing their dirty laundry into your place, right? With that's on their phone, their laptop, their tablet, something like that. Then you're at major risk there. No offense to Droids, but Android is a much less secure than iPhones. iPhone definitely embeds security in all of their updates,
Okay.
but they're also much slower to the game when it comes to all the cool gadgets, bells, and whistles that
That's so
Android
funny
has.
you say that, because it's almost a political conversation. Apple versus Droid. It can be, because some people go, oh, you're Droid. Oh, I'm Apple. And there's this eye roll. So I get that a lot in business, where I love Droid products because of some of the efficiency and the latest, the camera, quality. And so the Apple people will say, ours is still as good. I'm like, no, I don't think it is. So you're validating that. But the catch is the security could be lacking in that arena. So that's interesting that you say that. And my husband will appreciate a little bit of a plug to Droid, but the security is not as strong. So that's interesting.
With Droids, I don't want to interrupt, but just
Yeah.
to recommend with Droids, get security, something on there. Norton, there's different malware bytes, I think, has something out there. So different things for the security side of it, and only download things from your Google Play Store, right? And like for Apple, it's only download from.
Okay, because that's all vetted, right? If they're on the Play Store, they have to be, it's legit. They've been vetted, right?
Yeah, they'll still pull apps off because they slip through the cracks, if you will.
Okay.
But yeah, it's going to be more vetted by going through. So don't just hit some link that comes through on text. That's called smishing.
Oh my goodness.
SMS phishing.
Okay, so phishing is more email related, and then smishing.
Smishing is text.
I feel so
but
old.
there's Vishing too. All those phone calls you get, that's called Vishing.
Oh my goodness. Because is that like a voice for the V?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel you were mentioning being old in our first episode. Well, we're a similar generation, but no, you're making me feel a lot more hip. But it is kind of fun to hear how these acronyms or words, they all make sense. They're very clever,
Right.
if anything.
They try.
Yeah.
They certainly try. But the text, phishing stuff, that's what's really getting people these days.
You're right.
So don't just click those random links that you get in text messages.
And so I feel like sometimes the older generation, my mother, father, they'll be sharing things all over in Facebook Messenger. That's another one. I would say don't click those links. Would you agree? Because sometimes our parents are sharing things just like, oh, this is interesting. And then the hackers can look at that behavior. And then once you start clicking on those links again, it could cause a problem through the app, like Facebook.
I mean, God bless them. Our seniors and our toddlers are the most dangerous ones because
Oh my
before you
goodness.
know it, your 4-year-old has downloaded every game possible, and your card. You're like, why is my credit card getting rung up all of a sudden?
Right.
But then the seniors, they get targeted like no others because they're not as savvy.
Right.
I mean,
And that's a
in
whole other
general.
topic. A friend of mine who's a gerontologist, I mean, the scams, that's a whole other multiple episodes in itself, and it's unfortunate. So, well, I feel like I'm a little spooked, but in a good way. I feel like I'm a little more hip and educated. So hopefully the audience feels like that too because of you, Bryan. So I really appreciate all the information today.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. This is we could go on and on
I know.
forever.
Well,
It's never ending.
anyone that has questions for you, I'm going to give your contact information in the description boxes. So if I know you're the guy for questions and answers and implementation if necessary, but it sounds like the majority of the audience will need some or all things implemented. So again, I really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next episode. And thank you for all the Pathways listeners.
Absolutely.
All right, have a good one.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of The Amber Stitch Show. For more information about the podcast, books, articles, and more, please visit me at amberstitch.com. Until next week, enjoy your journey at home and at work. Thank you for listening.